they discovered that I had 3 tumors and not 2. They went through my imaging and scanned me again and said, Aurora, you have 3 GMO Lyme-sized tumors on your left lung, and it has now wrapped around your lymph nodes. Hi everyone, my name is Aurora Lucas, and welcome to my new YouTube channel. This is something that I've been thinking about for over a decade now, and it's finally happening. But welcome here. I wanted to first start talking about my diagnosis at age 28 with lung cancer stage 3A. And yes, I do have it. I still have my long hair. I'll dive deep into that. First things first, I was not expecting it. If you can't believe that I have it, I think when it was all happening, I could not understand for the life of me. I wasn't in denial. I was just like, what? My first symptoms started showing up around August 14th, 2021, and I was in a parking lot by myself because I like to go by myself everywhere. My husband was at work, and I was venturing around the city that we had bought our new home in. We had gotten a house at age 28, and my husband was only 23 at the time. And while we both felt accomplished, I was the one that dealt with a lot of paperwork, and I was under a lot of stress. As you all know, I love traveling, and I was like, was this the right move? My persistency and, pressure from everybody else to have a stable life, I was questioning it a lot. I was crying a lot. I was like, oh my God, we just got into debt for $205,000. For what? So when I had felt my chest pain, I was sitting there and I was like, are you serious? Like, am I really having a stroke right now from being this stressed? And so I called my sister. She's a nurse, and she said, it's probably all the stress that you're going through. And she recommended, why don't you go to the ER? And me and my immigrant mindset, I was like, no, that's going to be like $200, $250. You see, my mind was back and forth. I was like, I thought I was having a stroke, but I still wasn't willing to go to the ER because I thought I was completely fine. Fast forward a few weeks later, and in between a few weeks later, I was exhausted. We had gone back to the regular classroom. This was a year after remote learning and remote teaching. So this is our first time going back into the classroom. There was a lot of, I would say, like drama going on at work at this time. Not the students, it was just a lot of the staff. And I was advocating for something, and that was taking a lot of my energy and my mental health. But that was so normal for me, like just to like speak up. But I thought like the whole thing was draining me. So around 4 p.m. I was tired and I would have back pains. And fast forward about a month later, I experienced the chest pain again, but it was, how would I describe it? It felt like something was pinching me, but from the inside. I realize now that that was my body speaking to me, but at the time I was like, oh my God, like, am I having a stroke? Again, that thought occurred in my mind because I've known a few people who had a stroke at age 32, 33, very young, the people who are go-getters. So I still carried on with my day at work. At this time, I was already experiencing a cough. I thought it was just a cough that wasn't going away. And I finally got a hold of an appointment with my primary care doctor. That's another part of my story. And I went to go visit, and in my mind this was kind of an inconvenience because it was, my PCP was based off of my old address, so I had to travel maybe 45 minutes. And one of her residents saw me. I said, "Hi, this is what I'm experiencing." I laid out the symptoms. I was like, "I feel tired all the time. I have this cough." And he heard me. And pretty much he looked me straight in the eye and said, "Boil water and honey and you will be all right." So just, I am like warped back to that experience because I thought I had processed it, but I still haven't. This is about a year and a half later. And so I remember he said, like, come back, right? And I scheduled that. The next day I still had the chest pain and I didn't want to just go through with it. So I went to the ER. I waited at the ER for about 2 hours. This was at Loyola Hospital, and they took me in, and what I just remember was that I had a CT scan and some blood work. They came back and said, there is an extra electrical pathway in your heart. You probably have Wolff Parkinson's White syndrome. And I remember staring at the nurse and I was like, who the hell is that? She's like, I don't know, maybe some guy that invented it or found it, right? And so at this point they thought there was just something wrong with my heart. And I said, okay. And they said they could admit me. So I was admitted for about 2 days, and I think it was the second day where they were like, hey, we see something hazy in your lungs. Ding, ding, ding. They saw something hazy, but they said, but we think it, basically they said they weren't worried about it. It might have just been an infection. Another key point to this is that they asked, have you traveled anywhere, or, where have you been? And I basically said, I was born and raised in the Philippines, left when we were 7. I used to have TB when I was a kid. I remember that. And my mom gave me medicine, but it's been healed, right? Because I don't know, you're not allowed to have that here in the United States, or they have the cure for it here, but I feel like a lot of people just have it. So that was cured, but that was when I was 12. I was already 28. And they had me list, like, where have you been? And they were just trying to, make sense of what was happening. And they said that I would need a PET scan and a bunch of other tests, like for my heart, right? But then they said that they would discharge me. And then that would be like an outpatient kind of thing. So then I was, just living life normally with my symptoms like fatigue and stress and back pain and this cough. Beginning of November, the chest pains came back. And I went back to the same ER. And I have family members who are nurses, luckily, and my dad told them what was going on with me. So they said, go to that ER. Tell them you're in pain. Don't tell them that you're not in pain, and don't try to minimize your pain, but actually exaggerate it, right? Because let's say that my pain was a 10, I would always say that it's a 5. I was raised to look strong, and this transferred over to being in front of doctors and nurses. So I went in there and I said, oh my God, my chest pain is like a 9.5, which it was, but I was just not admitting it. So I went in there And when they know that there's chest pain, they will flag it. They will try to expedite it because who knows, maybe you're having a heart attack. So then I remember the doctor saying, you have HMO insurance. We don't even know if you're covered by this. And I said, please, like, I just need to be tested, and I need to know, like, what's happening with my body. I have no idea. My PCP is not answering the phone calls. Her office was not answering the phone calls. There was me, my cousin, and my sister all calling this office back to back. And so I explained the situation, and she looked at me and she said, okay, we'll admit you. You know, she wanted to help me, but I had to, like, basically beg her. I was like, please admit me. And this was the time that, you know, these hospitals were crowded. So I was going through all of this during COVID still. And finally, they admitted me again. And they said, there's something in your lungs that looks bigger than it was last time. And we're going to do a biopsy. No, wait. Before the biopsy, they said, where have you been? Where have you traveled? Given I've traveled to over 29 countries, so I listed that out, and they wanted to rule it out that I didn't have any of the infections. I was like, I've been in the United States for the last 3 years. And this, you know, and like their mentality, they're probably trying to cross out or rule out whatever it is and not jump to conclusions. So then I got, all of those tests kept coming back negative. So then finally they said, we're gonna go ahead with a biopsy. That will be tomorrow. I think that was my 3rd day at the hospital. They were inserting a tube, taking out a piece of, you know, whatever it was in my lungs, and then testing that to see what it actually is. Is it an infection or is it cancer, right? Nobody was saying the C word. One doctor did. He came in, he said, if it is cancer, don't worry, there's like medicine for it. They were very casual and not worried looking, all right? So then we did the biopsy. I was discharged. Before I was discharged, I said, hell no, you're not going to discharge me until I have results, right? I was in there for an extra 2 days, and they said, we are going to have to discharge you. We don't have results yet. So Loyola discharged me, and I waited for around 10 or 11 days. This was around Thanksgiving. And the doctor called and said, I'm sorry, Aurora, the results came back inconclusive. Given I was coughing so much, it hurt, like I could feel it. At this point, I was starting to cough out blood. I couldn't eat. I could barely walk. And we just wanted answers. So that's around Thanksgiving. The timeliness of the insurance is also important because it was December 1st. I was finally going to be able to switch my healthcare team. December 1st, before December 1st, I was supposed to have a second biopsy. I was already mad. My whole family was mad. They were like, WTF, like, they still get paid for doing a biopsy that's inconclusive. So I was like, do we fight? You can't really fight. And then my other PCP, the original one, she called me and said, everything's going to be okay. You're young. This was after Loyola had called her office and begged her. It was a bunch of doctors that were trying to call her office. I now realize that's medical neglect and a delay of diagnosis. That's after educating myself so much, but at this point I was like, oh my god, is this really happening in America? This is the country my family immigrated to and have invested so much of their time in. In my head I was like, aren't we supposed to be like the #1 country? Anyways, so December 1st, I got my new PCP. My sister and my dad took me. And I just kind of told him the whole ordeal. I said, I need another biopsy. We need to speed this up. You know, I was very demanding, but I was advocating for myself. I had to take off the shame of asking for too much because, you know, it was like a life or death situation. So I told the PCP and he believed me. This is the first one. This is Dooley Healthcare Team. He believed me. He had two doctors, the Badapalis, and it was Dr. Badapali that he wanted to recommend me to, but at first he wanted to recommend me to I believe like a lung disease specialist. I forgot what the medical term is. So he recommended me there, and one of my aunts volunteered to come with me. It's a crucial part of the story because this is one of my aunts and she's a nurse. This was a privilege that I had, given I am not in the medical field, so I didn't know what the fuck was going on. I just felt like I was dying, right? Something was wrong with my body. And my aunt took off from work, and I remember going there. And it's key to know that most of the medical teams or people or doctors, they're probably tired, so they're trying to chill out. So I had my appointment with this medical doctor. He was like a lung specialist. He was too relaxed for us, and we were like, my aunt was like, my niece is not feeling well. So he said, you're scheduled for this time. I think it was like the next week or the week after that. She said no, she needs to go to the emergency room so that she can get tested. See, there's still pieces in my mind that I tend to forget. Before December 1st, we're gonna go back. Alright, and I remember it was like late November, I finally had my PET scan. And everything lit up. I didn't know this. It was my best friend and my cousin. She read not the diagnosis, but it was a report, and she was crying, just bawling her eyes out. And she said, I love you so much. She said, your results say that, you know, it's lighting up everywhere, which means that there's cancer. She didn't say that, right? She was not allowed to say that. She just said that it lights up everywhere. Where her crying told me that there was something wrong. That's when my whole family was like all hands on deck. I come from a really big Filipino family. That's when they were like all hands on deck. So fast forward to December, right? So my PCP, and we're with this lung cancer doctor. And they have all of my records. They have all the reports and imaging. They only have all of it because I had to like bring a CD. So these are all different hospitals. I had to keep track of all of my shit, right? Anyways, my aunt looked him straight in the eye and said, 2 weeks? How is my niece, like, what is she supposed to do if she has a blood clot? That was key because I was already coughing up blood. And if I did have a blood clot, that's kind of on them, right? Because we told them everything. I don't know if it's going to be on them, but that's kind of when he had a sense of agency and was alarmed. He said, all right, you probably need to go to the emergency room. And we walked over from his office. I sat in the emergency room. I think he told them what was happening. I know that they don't like that because they're overcrowded already. So they admitted me, and I remember it was so quick that they were able to have the biopsy. So all of that, like 3 months before, right? They already saw something that was like a pistachio shape 3 months prior. And at this point, this doctor, I would call him, right, doesn't have a lot of sense of agency, but also he's the one who helped me get in there. I just kind of saw the power that people had. There are doctors who want to help you, but there are also doctors that don't. And within one day, they were able to perform the biopsy. The next day after that, we kept asking, are the results in yet? Are the results in? And finally, a little later on, one of the doctors came in and he said, he looked exhausted, by the way. He had bags under his bags, and he said, "It is cancer." I think he told me it was non-small cell. I don't recall who told me it was stage 3A, but I remember my world kind of shattering when I was told stage 3, because I thought it was just a little pistachio, but no, we found out that the tumor had grown so fast. They saw only 2 at this point. They were like the size of this, like lime size, that are GMO. I think they said 5 centimeters. There were 2 of them on my right lungs. So that is the story of how I was diagnosed with stage 3A lung cancer. I'd say first symptom was August. So I was in and out of hospitals and emergency rooms for 3 months. My primary care physician was non-responsive for most of the 3 months, and I had to transfer to a different team. I'm thankful for the second team, just getting shit done. Going back is like me reliving it, right? But the lesson I learned is that we have to listen to our bodies. And I also deal with a lot of hyper independence, meaning like I had to figure everything out on my own when I was a kid. Like my mom was working a lot and I never wanted to put a burden on her. She was also sick, so I never wanted to burden anyone. But finally, it was when my dad shared the story to his siblings and his cousins, what was going on with me, that I was finally able to get help. So, yeah, I mean, that is the story of my diagnosis. My second team was amazing, but I still, as a 28-year-old Asian American, Filipino American who was a non-smoker, I needed more answers because it was all a shock. So I actually ended up having to tell my second team that helped diagnose me that I wanted a second opinion. And it didn't come easy because I was so grateful. But then I was like, what is grateful going to do for me if I'm trying to save my life? Right? So I kind of had to push down the shame. And I was like, I'm so grateful for you, but I want to keep going. And I want to go to a hospital that can give me a second opinion, which was Rush Hospital. By the time I got to my third team, they discovered that I had 3 tumors and not 2. They went through my imaging and scanned me again and said, Aurora, you have 3 GMO Lyme-sized tumors on your left lung, and it has now wrapped around your lymph nodes. So that's my story of my diagnosis. Sorry, my puppy is like crying in my house. But stay tuned to the series. I was not expecting this video to be 24 minutes. But that's my story of my diagnosis, and I'll be posting up more videos soon and stories. Thank you.